Welcome to Build. I'm Laura Haywood, and I'm here with one of Broadway's most in-demand leading men, Telly Leung. He has so much going on. He's currently starring in the leading role in Aladdin. He has 6 other Broadway shows under his belt. He's got 2 solo albums, nationwide concerts, and just released a brand new single, All I Want for Christmas Is You. Telly, you're doing everything. You're everywhere. Congratulations.
Well, right now I'm here at the Build series.
Yes.
And right before we went on the air, actually, we talked about how awesome it is that we're in this amazing studio and that this used to be where I've spent many hours as a kid growing up in New York City, because this is the old Tower Records building.
And you're a Brooklyn guy. You went to Stuyvesant High School right around here.
That's right. Stuyvesant High School is right downtown, but I grew up in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
And, I would save up my allowance money and go see Broadway shows, get a ticket at the TKTS booth, or I would go to places like here, like Tower Records, and get like the next cast recording that was coming out of whatever favorite Broadway show I had at the moment, So
I heard a rumor you used to cut school to do it.
I did cut school. I cut school famously, and I didn't go to Tower Records, but I went to J&R Music World, which was closer to Stuyvesant High School, downtown by City Hall. The day that the double disc Rent album came out, and I said, I can't go to school. I need this CD right now.
I remember doing that too. I was in college at the time, but I had arranged my classes so that I could go and get the record the morning it came out.
And guess what?
CD.
There was a line. I mean, J&R Music World, for those of us who used to live in New York back in those days, remember, it was like a block and a block. I mean, it was a huge, huge music complex. And there were lines around the corner to get that Rent album. It was the first.
All the teenagers in New York knew the show.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of us had only heard these weren't
snippet.
supposed to have them bootlegs.
Bootlegs. Oh, I had a I fully confess, I had a Rent bootleg on cassette. Somebody with a little tape recorder that had tape recorded the show.
I heard a funny story about you and that bootleg, that when you were in Rent for the first time.
Well, I mean, when I was in Rent, I remembered they were teaching me the show. I joined the company in 2006, and I was there all the way to the end in 2008. And I remember the stage manager at the time, her name is, I'll never forget her, Crystal Huntington. She was the original stage manager at New York Theater Workshop.
Wow.
So there was nobody that knew the show better than Crystal. And when Crystal was teaching me the show, she'd go, okay, so at this line, you stand here, and then you walk stage right on the, and I was like, oh, I know. And I learned, they gave me 3 weeks to learn my track and also to learn my angel understudy duties. I'd learned everything in 2 weeks. And she said, you really know this show? And I said, Crystal, I've been doing this show in my brain for I don't know how long. Do you know what I mean? At that time, it was for 10 years I've been doing it in my brain. And I knew every word. I just knew it really, really well.
Is it true that you were like, I'm inside my own bootleg?
And then when Adam Pascal and Anthony Rapp came back into the show, and I was in the ensemble playing Steve and others, I remembered there's a moment in Rent in the opening number that they call The Clump. And it's when those 2 boys are singing in the front, da-na-na-na-na-na, and there's chaos, 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 and all of a sudden the ensemble gets behind them and we're in a clump. And I remember being in the clump and whispering to the person next to me, I am in my own Rent bootleg right now, watching Adam Pascal and Anthony Rapp sing the opening of Rent. It was wild.
Do you get nervous talking about the fact that you had those bootlegs when we're trying to discourage people now from
I highly out there for the public and the world. The beauty of theater is that it is ephemeral and it happens once, and that is the beauty of it, of course. But I don't know now. I mean, I also feel like back in those days, there really wasn't theater on the internet.
Yeah, there's no YouTube.
Right? It was dial-up modems, and it was there was no high-speed internet. So it came out of a place of love, and I felt like nobody really abused it the way that I feel like sometimes it gets abused now, where everything's online before. The biggest change was I remember doing Rent at the Hollywood Bowl, and I remembered my husband was there, and he got to come backstage often a lot, and I remembered at the time Vanessa Hudgens was with Zac Efron at the time,
right?
And then Zac Efron came backstage and said, "Hey guys, Act 1 is already online. This is at intermission." He goes, "Act 1's already on YouTube," and I said, "What?" We just did it. We just got out. We just got off from doing a special event. It's 3 shows at the Hollywood Bowl, and he came back and just said, "Yeah, it's already on YouTube." And I was like, "That's crazy." It was unbelievable. It's just that the world has changed a lot.
Totally. This used to be a Tower Records.
and I think back in those days it was it's different. I mean, I don't know. It was just different. I think it was less invasive. I think now it gets a little, now the phones and the everything gets so invasive in in a theater sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that being on stage, the audience is right there.
Oh, we see
and
it.
you can see them when they're
to
holding
everybody
their
out there,
phones
like
out.
if you wonder whether or not we can see you on your phone, we can absolutely see, like, we see it. We
Did
see
you
it and we
see
feel it.
what happened at the Cher show opening the other
I was
night?
at the Cher opening night.
You were
so
there.
I was actually
Tell
there.
for those who don't know what happened.
Well, first of all, the Cher opening night the other night was actually one of the most star-studded opening nights I've ever gone to, and I walked the carpet and I had my pictures taken, but then Cher was the next person that walked to the carpet and got her pictures taken, and I whipped out my phone. I was like, oh my gosh, it's Cher.
Well, on the red carpet,
You know what I mean?
it's okay.
And so, right, it's the carpet. I couldn't believe it, and but Kanye and Kim Kardashian were also at the opening night, and I don't know how often they go to the theater. You know, I think people that go to the theater often know, all right, the lights are dimming, it's time for me to turn off my phone, let me escape into the world of whatever the show is, you know, let me escape into the world of Cher and lose myself for at least an hour and 10 minutes, the first act, right? And then I can turn my phone on at intermission. I don't know how avid theater goers Kanye and Kim Kardashian are. I don't think they necessarily knew to turn off their phones. So Kanye was on his phone and tweeting during the show. And one of our beloved Broadway veterans, Jared Spector, was playing Sonny Bono, was like, I see you, Kanye. I can see you in a dark theater of over 1,200 people, you know, that you're on your phone and tweeting. And he tweeted at him and said, hey, just so you know, like, it's opening night and it's a big deal for us and we're doing a show up here, so if you don't mind, you know, he actually asked in a very, very nice way.
Yeah, and
Kanye
Kanye's
actually
credit.
and was actually very apologetic, and I thought that was like, oh, awesome. Like, you know, he might not know. That's the thing. Like,
Right.
if you don't go to the theater often, you might not know that.
Because everyone's got their phones out at Kanye's shows.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a different world too. You know, I remembered, you know, even going to concerts back. My first concert ever was New Year's Eve, and I don't remember which New Year's Eve it was, but I remember it was probably in the early 90s, and it was Janet Jackson at Madison Square Garden.
Wow.
And there were no phones.
I remember you didn't used to be allowed to bring a camera into the theater.
So when you watched a concert, it really was like everybody watching the same thing. And nowadays, it's almost expected, right? That at a giant concert at Madison Square Garden or something, everybody has their phone up to like Instagram the moment, or, you know, to grab a selfie with whoever's on stage. And it's just the culture's changed, you know. But not in the theater. I think there's something about the theater. It is such an intimate space. And the beauty of theater is that we all join this experience together communally, that we all go someplace together as a group. You know, in the same way that you wouldn't want to whip out your phone in the middle of church, I think of the theater in that same hallowed way.
It's definitely my church.
Right. It's so and I hope that never changes actually about the theater.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Whenever somebody violates that,
it
get
feels
a
right.
No.
And sometimes I think it's part of our job as theater folks, and as theater folks talking to, you know, people out there, you know, in the universe, is to go, hey guys, like for an hour and 10 minutes, like, keep your phones off. Just be here with us.
Well, and we ended up with a nationwide public service announcement because the thing with Kanye made national news.
It did.
Now everybody knows.
Everybody knows now.
I'm so excited that Janet Jackson was your first concert, because I know that 90s divas were like a major big deal for you.
Huge.
And that brings us back around to All I Want for Christmas Is You. Which,
Yeah.
of course, everyone learned from Mariah Carey.
And so, you know, I grew up in the 80s, and the 90s was really when I was like in middle school and high school, and that's when I really got into music, and I would cut class and go to J&R Music World and like go get albums and things, or spend hours at Tower Records. I mean, Tower Records, I remember, used to have the headphones connected to the whatever album was out that Tuesday.
Afford it.
And if you couldn't afford to buy the album, you could at least like listen to a couple of tracks, you know, and then go save up your money and come back next week and get it. But I grew up on those voices. You know, it was I always say that, you know, Whitney Houston was my first voice teacher, because it was the first voice that spoke to me, you know, I you know, at 5 years old, when she was singing "Saving All My Love for You." I had no idea that she was singing about extramarital affair. I just knew that it was like an amazing song with an amazing, incredible voice. And so I learned every word and every riff, you know, belting out "Saving All My Love for You," you know, alone by myself in the shower. Do you know what I mean? But like, no idea what it was about. But I just knew the power of the human voice.
Yeah.
And then in the 90s, it was all about Mariah, right? So, you know, so naturally when it came time to go, hey, I'd really love to be able to do a Christmas single. And I'd really like to be able to have it benefit an organization that is very near and dear to my heart, ASTEP, which stands for Artists Striving to End Poverty, which was actually begun by several students from Juilliard and also Broadway music supervisor Mary Mitchell Campbell. And
it's like the most wonderful person in the whole
incredible.
industry.
She just opened the Prom a couple of weeks ago on Broadway. She's always so busy, one of the busiest women in show business. But every year, Lynn Schenkel, who is also a wonderful musical director and music supervisor in the Broadway community, she does a yearly Christmas benefit at Joe's Pub, and it's for ASTEP. And so one year she said, hey, I'm going to take all the things you love, Mariah Carey, Whitney Houston, and I'm going to create an arrangement of this song for you and we're going to do it for charity. And we loved it, and at the time, Lynn and I were working on Allegiance because she was the musical supervisor and orchestrator on Allegiance. And so this was our fun little side project that we had. And then so this year we thought, you know what, what the world needs is more positive energy. And so we decided that this was kind of our Christmas gift to the world and to an organization that we love. ASTEP, what ASTEP really strives to do is they bring arts to underserved communities that don't have access to it. And they do that domestically here in the United States, but they've also done programs in Africa and in India. I mean, it's really, really incredible. And the idea is that the arts is something that is able to expand minds. And, the arts is where we can all use our imaginations to believe what is possible in the world. And that's especially important for people that are in underserved communities that feel like nothing is possible. And that really the arts is the way to break that cycle of poverty, of the cycle of can't, and to show young people that they can. And we just thought, that's exactly what we want to do for Christmas, in the spirit of holiday and the spirit of giving, create this single and have it be something that makes money for ASTEP. Every Christmas.
Yeah. Every time I hear that somebody's going to cover Mariah Carey, I'm like, oh no. Because, her voice is legendary and those whistle tones that she hit are impossible. And I thought, and of course, I've known you and your voice for a long time. We were just noticing that we've been friends for 8 years this week.
Twitter friends.
So yeah.
We started as Twitter friends.
So, and so that's a long time. And so obviously I wasn't like, oh, he's not going to be able to take on this song, but I really was curious about how you were going to do it. And man, you nail it.
Oh, well, thank you.
And I think here's what I observe as the reason. You're not doing a karaoke version of Mariah. When you go into that second verse where you start mixing things up and you put some like jazz, would you sing a little bit of it? You don't have to, but
sure, I can.
I know you have a cappella experience because you were on In Transit, the first a cappella musical on Broadway. If you'd be willing,
which way should I sing? Sing that away?
Sing to that. Camera 3.
I don't want a lot for Christmas. There is just one thing I need. I don't care about the presents underneath the Christmas tree. I don't need to hang my stockings there upon the fireplace. Santa Claus can't make me happy with a toy on Christmas Day. I just want you for my own, more than you could ever know. Make my wish come true, baby. All I want for Christmas is you.
I have goosebumps.
A little acapella. We also decided to do it in, Lynn, such a smart orchestrator, Lynn Schenkel, and such a brilliant, musical mind that she was like, we cannot do what Mariah did. Let's do it in a gospel 3. Let's pull back the tempo and let's just recreate it. Let's reimagine the songs as if the song was written yesterday and I had to orchestrate it for a Broadway show or something.
Yeah.
And so that was what was really great, is that we took a song that we loved, we treated it as new.
Yeah.
And I often try to do that, when I'm doing a club gig at Birdland or 54 Below or something like that, or Feinstein's. I try to take songs that people love and try to go, listen, there's another way to look at this song that we all know, and I often cover songs that people know, like All I Want for Christmas Is You or Leaving on a Jet Plane or something like that.
Yeah, you've got 2 albums
and I have
that
2
are
albums
full
out
of songs.
Right, and Stevie Wonder songs and theater songs too. And I always try to go, listen, all of us have heard these songs so many times, but I'd love for my listeners to be able to hear it in a totally different way. And maybe they'll pick up a lyric that they didn't pick up before, or maybe they'll pick up a different sentiment in it or a different point of view in it that they hadn't heard before. So that's the power of art, right? Is that it's subjective and we can see it from so many different angles. And so I try to do that musically with anything that I try to record.
Let's talk about Aladdin for a second.
Yes.
You are the ultimate Disney prince right now. The star of Aladdin on Broadway.
I'm having a blast at Agrabah. I've been there for now almost 2 years, and I'm going to be there until February 17th.
Lots of time to still.
Lots of time, yes, absolutely, and it's been an amazing time. There's something very, very special happening at the New Amsterdam Theater. It is not only is it a very happy show to do on stage. I mean, it's a show that's full of joy, and in the world today, I think we can't get enough of it, right? Like to kind of go to the theater and escape to Agrabah for 2.5 hours, you know, in a big boy meets girl, tap dancing, splashy, ritzy, glitzy Broadway musical.
Not to mention really diverse.
And absolutely.
Like, I love the idea that Agrabah is a fictional place, so why can't it look the way we want the world to look?
It should
people
look
of
like,
every stripe.
I think Casey Nicola has been quoted saying that he wanted his Agrabah to look as diverse as 42nd Street, which is where the New Amsterdam Theater is, that it should look like people from Agrabah are from all over the world. And I love that about our show. And the story is so beloved and so known. Also, why not do that, right? Like, why not have it be representative of how diverse our world really, really is? But that theater, too, has all this incredible history, which is something that I, as a theater nerd, I really, really dig because, that house, the New Amsterdam, is where the Ziegfeld Follies were. So,
I heard a rumor that there's still a Ziegfeld Follies girl haunting that place.
Olive, our beloved ghost, is still in that theater. Olive has been very good to me, actually, at the New Amsterdam Theater. The girls' dressing room says that sometimes they're like, things sometimes just fall off a shelf, or like a trash can will tip over, and it usually freaks out the new kid in the dressing room, but usually they just go, that's just Olive. She's just hanging out. It's fine, But there's been some incredible history in that building. Not just the Ziegfeld Follies, but there's a whole other theater that was above the Follies that housed the Frolic, which was actually a show that was like the midnight show. So after you went to the Ziegfeld Follies, if you wanted to see some more entertainment, you would go upstairs to the midnight show in a smaller theater. And that is now where the Disney offices are. But if you ever go up to the Disney offices and you see the cubicles and all of that, you can still see the markings of where the proscenium would be and where the stairs go up to the mezzanine and all of that. The structure of that office, you look at it, you go, this doesn't look like an office building. I wonder why. And it's because it used to be a theater.
I got to get myself a meeting in that building.
Upstairs, but also up there, back when the New Amsterdam wasn't, after the Follies and it wasn't used and stuff, they would still use that Frolic Theater as a rehearsal space. Wow. So there's footage up there of Ethel Merman and Julie Stein at the piano playing through songs of Gypsy for Merman up there. And John Kander writing dance arrangements up there, before he was John Kander of Kander and Ebb. Do you know what I mean? So it's an incredible, there's so much history in that building, and you feel it. You feel it when you walk through the stage door every night.
Do you still pinch yourself?
Always. I'm in shock that this is my job. Always. And that feeling of like walking in a stage door at night, like at 7 o'clock before the 7:30 half hour or whatever it is still like, you and at the New Am, you have to ring the bell before you get in. And there's always that moment of like, I'm going to work, and my work is a Broadway show, right? Like, so you stand outside the stage door and you go, right, I'm about to go and do my job. And yes, it's a job. So it's a hard job.
Sure.
And sometimes, there are days that you're more enthusiastic about doing your job than others. That's like every job, right? But there's always that moment of like, holy cow, that's my job. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Is to entertain 1,700 people. And then, of course, when you leave the theater, too, when you leave a show, when you're done with a 2.5-hour musical like Aladdin, you're buzzed on adrenaline. You just are.
Yeah.
Right? And so when you leave and you walk out it's really cold in New York today for all of my friends out there who are not in New York, but we're freezing out there. I know that when I leave a theater, it could be 0 degrees outside, and I'm like, I could be wearing a T-shirt and I'm fine.
Really?
Because of all that adrenaline that's pumping through my body. So those are the two moments, like walking in and out of that stage door, those are like the pinch me moments where I go, oh, right, like this is crazy that this is my job in the best way.
And there are people out there waiting to meet you.
Yeah, and that too, like that of like, and also to know that I was one of those people, right?
Yeah.
Like you would often see young Telly Leung at a stage door. Do you know what I mean? Like waiting at the stage door after.
Who did you wait to meet?
Oh, that original company of Rent. Absolutely. Betty Buckley, when she was in Sunset Boulevard, I still am a huge Betty Buckley fan. Like, actually, I'm actually looking at my calendar going, okay, I'm done with Aladdin on February 17th. Where can I fly in the United States to go see Betty Buckley do Hello Dolly? Like, I'm already planning it as like one of my like vacation trips.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still a theater nerd in many ways. Do you know what I mean? Who else did I wait for? I waited for Bernadette Peters outside of Annie Get Your Gun. I remember that. Waiting for her there. So many people. Davis Gaines, who was in the Phantom of the Opera, I waited for him out at the stage door of the Majestic.
My favorite thing about theater people is that nobody just falls into this industry. Like, I feel like sometimes with TV and movies, you'll get someone who a director spots on the street and is like, I have to put you on screen. But you don't get into theater unless you really love it.
Well, there's no way to get onto the stage. I mean, the reality is that with what we do, there are so many hoops that you must jump through in order to actually get the gig, right? And that's and it's more so than it's you know, our job interviews consist of singing your 16 bars, your 32 bars, or your full song, reading, learning, memorizing lines for sides, doing a ballet combination. You know what I mean? Like those, and then waiting for months to hear whether or not, you know, you're going to get to the next round, or, you know, or whether or not there's no longer any interest in you for the role. I mean, so it's the jumping through hoops to actually get to perform is really the work. I've had agents and managers say that to me too, that they go, you think that performing is the work? The performing is actually the icing on the cake.
Yeah. That
you got the gig and you get to like do the awesome gig that you have 8 times a week on Broadway playing Aladdin, right? But like the actual work are the amounts of hoops that you have to jump through to actually get to that gig, and it is your job to audition. And it was very smart. It was very, very smart advice that I got from a manager that said, don't think of the performing as the job. The job is for you to like keep putting yourself out there on that proverbial line, on the chorus line, and like keep putting yourself out there and proving yourself. That's the real job.
Yeah. Well, you have proven yourself for 16 years on Broadway now.
Wild, crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
We could spend another half hour talking just about all of those hoops that I know you've jumped through. I do want to give the audience an opportunity to ask you a couple of questions, though.
Yeah.
Great.
Shoot.
We're going to start right here.
Hi.
Over these years, you've given so many audiences in so many venues such joy through your work. But also, you've done work like All I Want for Christmas for many causes through the years. What motivates you to be concerned for the world?
Yeah. So, I think a lot of it is that now that I'm in my 30s and in this business, to be able to look back on that, to be able to look back on 16 years of being on Broadway and look back on 7 Broadway shows and all the awesome opportunities I've gotten, I realized that there's no way to get there by yourself, right? Like there really isn't. Like, and you kind of look at it and go, look at all the people that have come before me or helped me along the way. That's why I'm here today, right? That's why I'm here at the Build Studio today doing this. Like, really, like there's so many people that have helped me get to this very spot. And I have to tell you, recently we just did the Red Bucket Follies.
Oh my gosh!
For Broadway Cares, Equity Fights 8.
I was there yesterday.
And so the opening number, which is a number that some of my Asian colleagues and I had pitched to Broadway Cares almost 10 months ago, saying, hey, the 60th anniversary of the original company of Flower Drum Song, the 1958 company that opened at the St. James, that opened in December, is happening. And I said, there are those actors that are pioneers that came before me that if those actors had not existed, had there not been a Bjork-Lee or an Alvin Ing or Jose Lanas, there would be no Telly Leungs in this business. So and in a way I said there's got to be a way for then us to be able to pass that on to the next, right? I think that's kind of where I am artistically as an artist, is going, how do I, like, because I've been given so much the last 16 years, how do I give back in some way? So even in that Red Bucket Follies opening number we did yesterday, we had that first generation of 1958 Asian actors who were really pioneers. I mean, they were out there doing, you know, there were only 3 shows. There was King and I, Flower Drum Song, and Susie Wong. That was it in their generation. And
and at that point, like, Rita Moreno was getting cast
correct.
in every role of color.
And Juanita Hall was getting cast as an Asian woman, right? So then there was like my generation, which was part of that O2 revival. But then we did a whole recreation of Fantan Fanny from Flower Drum Song.
It was so beautiful.
And we passed that on to all the Asian actors who are now on Broadway who are the next, the up and comers, right? So like Sabrina from Hamilton and June from The Prom, and you know, and so it was just kind of our way of going, okay, now your turn.
Well, and they're playing, you know, an Ashley Park, who's in Mean Girls, is there. And like, these are people who are finally getting the opportunity to not just play the roles written specifically for Asian characters, but they're playing Americans.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. Like, if Broadway's having a diversity renaissance.
Yeah.
And I do feel like you are part of the generation that has led us there.
Well, thank you. But really, you know, I have to look back and give thanks to those that came before me that did it, that were really struggling to do it. So in many ways, you know, doing that for Broadway Cares, doing this for ASTEP, I think I'm just in a place artistically where I feel like, right, like I've been given a lot. Now how do I make something in the world that lasts beyond me, that is going to benefit other people beyond me? And I think that's just kind of, in your 20s you can't do that, right? Because in your 20s you're just figuring out how do I like get to the next gig and pay my rent and like put food on the table, right? Like, but like as you start doing this a little more and you go, oh, like I've actually built a career where I actually have the time and the bandwidth and the resources to give back some of the stuff that I've been given. Like it feels good to do it. It feels good and it feels right to do it. And I don't know, and I hope it inspires, you know, that next generation that's in their 20s now, when they get to be here, that they get to do that for others, you know?
I think this is also a really good time to mention that Allegiance, the musical you did with George Takei and Lea Salonga, is going to actually be available again for people to see in theaters through Fathom Events, just coming up in the next few days.
It's December 11th, and thank goodness for Fathom Events.
The legacy of this show is so important, especially now. It's based on George Takei's real-life childhood experience of being in an internment camp for Japanese Americans during the war, and it's so eerily similar to what's going on with children being taken from their families at the border right now. And you know, it's not just the causes you choose, it's the shows you choose to put good into the world. And I'm so glad that one still exists in a way that people can experience it.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, the show had a very short run on Broadway for 4 months, but because of Fathom Events, that story has been kept alive. And I'm thrilled that our producers kind of at Allegiance had the foresight to go, we really need to capture this and make sure that this story lives on. And it was always our goal. It was always our goal to, yes, of course, everybody would love a big, financially successful Broadway hit, right? Of course. But we said what's really important is if this movie can be played in every history class in middle school, that would be amazing. Yeah. The way that 1776 is played to learn about your founding fathers, if like kids in history classes can also watch Allegiance and gain some perspective of that period in our American history, it would be awesome. Yeah. And I think we are achieving that little by little. That now this story is getting told and people are actually exposed to it. You know, I remember when I first started working on the show in 2009, 2010. I didn't know anything about the internment. I knew nothing about it. Growing up as an East Coast kid, it wasn't even taught in our history classes.
I don't remember learning about it on the West Coast either.
Right. I think on the West Coast, because so many of those Japanese Americans were taken from the West Coast and interned, and then they went back to the West Coast, I think oftentimes my West Coast friends said, oh yeah, I have a friend who's Japanese and her, you know, that I went to school with, and her grandmother was interned. And there was that kind of exposure, that was that kind of like, my best friend is Japanese and she had family in the camps. But it was still not something that was like, hey guys, in history class, a history teacher would go, this happened. And I think that that's kind of what we're trying to do with Allegiance, of course, in a Broadway, entertaining, musical, artistic way as well of telling that story, but making sure that the story gets told in a way where people go, oh my gosh, what if that was my family? You know, what if that was, what if I was the wrong skin color this political period? Do you know what I mean? And I, it's my hope and my wish that, you know, that somebody, that we can look back at that story and go, oh, it's a period piece that doesn't exist anymore, but that's not the reality, is that actually we need that story now more than ever.
On a lighter note about Allegiance, you played a younger version of George Takei.
I did.
Did you ever play with the idea of doing an impression of him? Because he has such a notable voice. I just couldn't, and I've heard you do your George impression.
I mean, when you spend that many hours with George Takei, you start to develop a way of talking just like it. I mean, you just start, oh my. You find it. And I think all of us in Allegiance have our, like, our George impressions. And he's such a good sport for putting up with it.
Have you ever heard him on the Howard Stern show, by the way?
He and Howard have a very special relationship. And Howard was at our opening night, Howard Stern was like, I never go to Broadway openings. He's like, but for George, he did. And I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah, awesome. I love George.
I love him. And he continues to be a really great, talk about again, an actor who was kind of a pioneer that opened doors for so many. He was an Asian actor on television that was on television on like one of the coolest shows on TV. And he was not playing a stereotype of any kind. Like you know what I mean? Like he was playing this heroic, crew member on the Enterprise. And it was something that opened a lot of doors for people like me too. So
let's take another question from the audience.
yeah. Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Love that you do all this stuff, and you're always all over the place, on Broadway or at the Birdland. Well, what do you have planned next?
Yeah, so I actually have some fun. A vacation. I think that's definitely planned next.
Going to see Betty Buckley.
You're going to see right. I've been very blessed that I've had 3 very busy years on Broadway between Allegiance, and then going right into In Transit, and then going right into Aladdin. And 8 times a week is tough. I love it. It's my job, and I can't wait to go back and do it again. I am also looking forward to a weekend and dinners with my husband, and those things too. I think are in my is next for sure. But also I have some concert gigs coming up on the West Coast. I'll be in San Francisco in March, and I'm doing a symphony gig in Memphis, and so a lot of concerts and things coming up. Yeah.
And people can find all those dates at
TellyLeung.com. Yep. As soon as tickets go on sale, I always post them up there.
And at Telly Leung on Twitter, where we
That's
first
right,
met.
We were the beginnings of our friendship.
We've got one last question from the audience.
Absolutely.
Hi.
Hi.
I was wondering, what to you makes a good musical?
What to me makes a good musical? Ooh, that's such a good question.
That's a deep one.
I want you to answer this one too, actually. Like what you think makes a good, because I know this is such a big theater fan. To me, what makes a good musical, that's a really tough question because there's so many things that go into that. But to me, it's about how do I, in musicals, there's the 3 disciplines that you need, right? It's acting, it's movement, it's music, singing, right? And how do I translate a story how do I translate a story through the filter of those 3 disciplines that are like the core disciplines of musical theater, right? So how do there are masterful feats Hamilton is like the thing that comes to my mind, right? Of like something that is masterful in its text, and in its lyricism and in its musicality. But then all of a sudden you don't even notice that all of a sudden now the story is being told through movement and through dance. And then the characters that are now historical characters that could be really boring in history class have now become alive and fully fleshed out human beings that I have an emotional connection to. And that's the acting part of it. And it's kind of the amalgam of those 3 disciplines into this beautiful messy blob that is an organized chaos that I think makes a good musical, actually.
Good
I think that's really what it is. And it's something that is it's something that is a structured chaos. I guess that's the best word for it, of those 3 things, that's when theater is really exciting to me, when I go, oh my gosh, I felt everything, and they didn't, all through a dream ballet, I felt all of those emotions, you know what I mean? And in real life, we can't do that. That only happens in the theater. And so to me, that's what makes a great musical, is when we kind of break out of that norm of everyday life, and we can look at the world through those filters.
I was going to say a clue to a great musical for me is when it never occurs to anybody to go, why are they singing?
Yes, that feeling of I just sat for 2.5 hours and watched people sing and dance on a stage, and I bought it.
There's one other characteristic that I know across the board makes a great musical, and that is casting Telly Leung.
Oh,
everything you've ever done is amazing. I am so proud to be your friend. It's so great to have you back on the Build stage.
Thank you for having me.
And I'm going to squeeze in at least one more visit to Aladdin before you leave.
Come down to Agrabah.
Thank you so much, Telly, for everything.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.